All right, good morning, gang, and welcome to Aired Out, Fly on the Wall Productions. We are live, as always, from North Main Street in Barrie, Vermont. Nice to have you on board. Thank you so much for joining us, for tuning in, for being a part of the experience here every single day. I think if you're a regular viewer, watcher, listener, you probably know that day to day, hour to hour, it can change drastically here at Aired Out with our guests, our topics, what we're getting into and what we're diving into. This morning, Rick DeAngelis, right next to Heather Slayton in the guest chairs this morning, and I am so honored to have you in here. Heather is more or less a regular, so I'm always honored to have her in here. But Rick, you I don't think, I'm not sure if you and I have ever met, but we have chatted a few times, and I've been wanting to have you in here to share a microphone for a long time. So thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. It's great to be here. You and I talked, gee whiz, maybe early in the pandemic, I think, and made plans, but I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. What's going on? How are things over at the Good Samaritan? What's your official title?
I am the co-executive director of Good Samaritan Haven.
Okay.
And how are things going? We're really busy. We have 3 shelters that we operate now, and street outreach program. We have a site-based program at the Hilltop Inn, and we're super busy. The shelter is full. I regret to say, actually, yes.
How was this past winter? It wasn't the roughest winter on record, I think, with cold and snow, but there was a couple of snaps there that were particularly hard. Erica Reel was in here on the air, I think, just leading up to one of the big ones, which was like a week long, where it was like stupid below zero every day.
Yeah, sure thing. I remember it well. We actually had a pipe burst in our new facility on the Barrie-Montpelier Road. Altogether, I think we worked well with local public safety officials and partners, and everyone that needed to get housed and get in from the cold were able to do that.
Okay. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here. Thanks.
And obviously, and I don't need to tell Heather this, but just jump in any time you want and pipe in. There's a good amount of uncertainty that's coming down the pipe real soon here statewide with what's going to happen. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, did you get a chance to see the governor's press conference yesterday or the other day? I have not had a chance to listen to the whole thing, just little bits and pieces here and there. I will at some point soon be able to listen to the whole thing, but how much of homelessness was brought up in that press conference?
JD, I'm guilty as you are. I haven't heard it either.
Well, we're both busy.
Yeah, but I have a pretty good idea of what the administration and the legislature is planning. There have been some significant resources directed toward homelessness and a response to homelessness, and that's good. The problem is that we're approaching a cliff in terms of the 2,000 Vermonters that are residing. Their emergency shelter is a motel room somewhere in the state, and I'm disappointed in the response from both the legislators and the governor to address that.
Do you feel, in layman's terms here, just basically that the legislature is, and Vermont government as a whole, and I know that we're generalizing here, are just not fully aware of the real boots on the ground severity of day to day, how rough the state is with homelessness right now?
I would agree with that. Legislators care. I talk to them often. They want to understand.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different when you're there and you're trying to help people, and you see a different side of Vermont. And I have to say, despite all the best efforts, I find that the social safety net is pretty thin, and it doesn't work as well as we would like it to.
Yeah. I think part of the reason why Heather is sitting next to you is because if we take homelessness as what it is, which is so complex and so involved and so detailed, and we go up another 100,000 feet above it, the ceiling of this is mental health, maybe.
Is that a question?
Yeah,
I can try to answer that
yeah.
or give you my opinion.
But I mean, ultimately, that's kind of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I would say it's health, not just mental health. And there's a lot of things that come into health.
Sure.
There's housing.
That's another 10,000 feet up.
Well, yeah, I guess so. But these things are all interconnected.
Sure, they are.
I
Of course
think
they are.
it's not as productive to try to slice and dice them.
Yeah.
And say, oh, this is an opiate crisis thing, or
Right.
this is entirely a housing crisis thing. They're very tightly interwoven.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say it's everything. I mean, Washington County Mental Health works from a housing first model, and that's because it is everything.
Yeah.
Mental health is health. It just is health.
Yeah.
And if you are unhoused, and especially chronically unhoused, you can't access your physical health care providers, your mental health care providers. You can't access your substance use disorder providers.
Of course.
You can't access employment if somebody can't reach you, or
Yeah.
you can't shower to get to work, or you
Right.
can't reach transportation.
Right.
You can't access education or job training. You can't always access any of the things that you need to be safe,
Yeah,
or
right.
to cook food.
Sure.
You can't always access things that will keep you from sliding down into those dark pits of depression.
Sure.
And that gives you more access to feel like you need to maybe self-medicate with substances.
Yeah.
If you are housed reliably, which does not mean always a hotel. That is
Right.
not the best case scenario for anybody.
Sure.
But it's what people have right now.
Yeah.
If you are housed, then you've got a stable place to be, to wash yourself,
Yeah.
to feel better,
Right.
to make a meal,
Yeah.
to have a contact point for jobs, for medical providers,
Sure.
for treatment providers, for all the things.
I think,
And that
isn't-
just lifts a person.
yeah, isn't shelter one of Maslow's hierarchy
It
of
is,
needs?
yes, the basic,
Sure.
most basic of needs.
Right.
And if you don't have that, then everything
Everything
starts
else.
to crumble. And if
Sure.
it's already crumbled and you can't get into it, you're not going to get much lower.
It's all a vicious cycle,
It is.
and it can create its own momentum very quickly. And both of you are trying to tap the brakes on that momentum, which is a tall order. And I admire both of you so much for that. Also, a vicious cycle is that, and point your finger wherever you want to point it, the pandemic or otherwise, but just the fact that there are so many people that are living in hotels now in Vermont. This is a topic of discussion that is everywhere. It's in every form of media. It's talked on the streets. It's Vermont's landscape with hotels, which are supposed to be what they are, and there's a relationship there with tourism and the likes. But a lot of folks have opinions that Vermont has somewhat kind of created a monster here with a cycle of this is the new norm where hotels are now becoming homes, and it's been what, 3 years now, and folks are we have acclimated. We have I don't want to say grown comfortable, because that's not really. It's not ideal for anyone to be living in a hotel year after year, especially throw children in the mix and all of that. But it has become a cycle in that how do we get back to what are the other options?
Well, and it's very unfortunate that we're 3 years into this.
That's what I'm saying.
And a solution has not been found 3 years in. It was convenient at the outset of the pandemic that there was some place to put people to keep them safe.
And maybe even more than convenient, maybe appropriate.
Right. And, thank God something was found then.
Sure.
But there have been 3 years to come up with solutions that are needed now in 27 days. And 27 days isn't going to cut it if 3 years hasn't.
So what's the state of Vermont's plan? What is the city of Barry's plan on a smaller level? I mean, we're right here. We're literally sitting on North Main Street. These hotels that we're talking about are within a couple of miles of us, or even less, Rick.
Yeah.
What's the plan here? What's happening at the end of May, and what's happening at the end of June? First, we should probably start.
I can do my best to address that, but if you will permit me to take one step backwards in this conversation,
of course.
I just want to offer that this is not a unique Vermont problem that just kind of emerged when COVID happened.
You are right.
Yeah, I've been working in housing and homelessness since the early 1980s.
Yep.
And in fact, it was in the 1980s, as I see it, that this modern phenomenon of homelessness really ramped up. There was a big shift in income from the lower income and middle income to the wealthy.
Yep.
It's been documented. It's not some big secret or something like that.
Right.
I was working in Boston at that time. I worked at the Pine Street Inn, and all of a sudden we were up to hundreds, and then up to 700 people a night at the Pine Street Inn. It was
many of which probably never imagined that they would be in that situation.
That's right. And not only that, that was with deinstitutionalization from state mental hospitals began. So, great idea, but it wasn't really implemented the way it needed to be.
Right.
So that happened, and you had this phenomenon that just grew, and it became part of our landscape, if you will.
Yeah.
And then again, over the last 10 years, there's been another wave of homelessness. With we've got a historically tight housing market. We have an opioid crisis, and so that's the context. And it's not just Vermont. I would invite your listeners to
It's not just New England.
That's right. Just Google homelessness wherever,
Yeah.
and you're going to see there are articles and stories about communities that are struggling to know what to do.
Right.
And to the credit of the people of Vermont, I think a very significant effort has been made to do the right thing. But it's tricky, it's complex, it's expensive, and here we are. We had people in the motels. That was the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
And but the state is saying we don't have the capacity to pay for this any longer.
And yet there are many, respectfully, that would disagree and say, no, Rick, that was not the right thing to do because we created a problem that we now can't dig ourselves out of. I'm just saying that we have drawn so many lines, and there's so much polarization now with the way that we think. We either lean left or we lean right, and we've got our blinders on. a lot. All we all do.
Yeah.
We
Boy,
all
I'll
do.
tell you, JD, my job is hard, but it's a gift too, because my office is at our shelter on the Barry Montpelier Road, and I meet people and get to know them.
And you hear all kinds of opinions.
Well, our shelter guests are people like you and I.
That's right.
mean, and you hear their story and their humanity, and left, right, politics, all that stuff kind of just fades away because it's you've got that person and you hear their story, and you just want to help and say, what can we do to help this person to get back on track again. So it is polarized, the community, but I also find that the communities are talking about homelessness in a way that I've never experienced before.
Sure.
Just 2 days ago, I participated in a meeting with public safety officials from Barry, Berlin, and Montpelier in Barry Town, and saying, what can we do? What can we do to respond to the this crisis that's unfolding before us? So I don't remember that level of discussion and insight happening years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like, oh, this is the state's problem, or the Good Samaritan Haven's problem, or Washington County Mental Health Services problem.
Right.
Sure. So, well said. What's going to happen at the end of this month, in a couple of weeks? What's going to happen at the end of June, in a month?
Yeah. Let me try to explain that to the best of my knowledge. So currently there are 2,000 households, 2,500 people, because there's a lot of children. There are households with children.
Sure.
In motels as emergency housing at hotels around the state.
How many?
2,000, let's say 2,500 people in total.
Statewide.
In Washington County, the numbers are very high. We have 300, and in the high 300s, let's say 350 individuals, adults and children, that are living in a Washington County motel room. So it's a big number for our population.
Yeah.
So the emergency hotel program is winding down, and the first step in that wind down is May 31st, where the eligibility is going to be tightened quite significantly. At that time, we're expecting about 100 individuals to just lose their assistance, and they have to leave. It's done. They no longer have a motel room. The next step in the wind down is at the end of the state's fiscal year, June 31st. After that date, there will be a further ratcheting down, and statewide, we're going to go from 2,500 people to 200, 250 people that are in motels. So that is it's a catastrophic drop in assistance. And so where are these folks going to go? That's the question. And if your listeners read or listened to any of the debate in the legislature, some legislators feel that Vermonters are just they're going to figure it out. And I hope a lot of them do, but I just can't believe that everyone is going to figure it out and figure out some kind of solution, whether it's couch surfing or going back with a family member or wherever it is. There's going to be some fallout.
Who will be the first to go? Those without children?
Without children, non-elderly, and without a documented disability.
Who's knocking on the door and handing the notice?
That's the job of the what's called the Economic Services Division, or ESD, of the state of Vermont. And people have already been given their notice, and there is an awareness now, by folks in the motels of who's losing their assistance.
Okay.
And we've, it's not all entirely doom and gloom. I met a fellow a couple of days ago at one of the hotels, and he is going to. There is some security deposits were paid through the ERAP program, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that was used to fund this, and so a number of people are going to get back security deposits, and
What's
that'll
that, what's
help.
that called again?
ERAP, Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and that was a federally funded program that paid for the motels for a good period of time. So this particular guy, he said to me, "I'm getting back my deposit." He says, "I have an apartment lined up," and he said, "And as soon as I get my deposit returned, I'll be able to move out of here." And he says, "This has been great for me. I've been here 2 years. There was a community of support.
Sure.
But I am sick and tired of living off, out of a microwave."
Yeah.
And he did also say, he said, "I have cancer. I'm sick. But I am delighted to get out of here." So I was glad for him, but also sad to hear that story.
Yeah. You said you've met with public safety officials here in the Granite City. Quite obviously, they're very aware of this, of what's coming down the pipe. Where are these people going to go? I mean, that really is the $1 million question here.
I don't have an answer for that. Our shelters, we have 62 shelter beds. We're full every day. New people appearing, looking for rooms, shelter beds with us every day. And so we have no capacity. I mean, there's some turnover, and we'll be able to accommodate a few people, but it's not like we're going to make a big dent. If we have 100 exiting in Washington County, I assume some of them are going to figure it out. They will find a solution, like this guy. He's one
Right.
of, he's one of that 100, but not everybody. And so, there are already people living outside right now. So it's not like, it's just going to compound an already stressed out situation.
Right.
And that's no matter how many come out. If it's one, you're adding to the stress and strain on your system,
Sure.
Right.
mental health system, the
school system.
the school system. People are staying in emergency rooms. They're hanging out in emergency rooms all day long, and so all of these systems that we have are under a high state of pressure right now, and this is going to add to that.
Right.
That's the problem. Not, I'm sure it won't be all 100. Going to end up in downtown Main Street here.
Right.
But even a small number is going to make a difference.
It is. And the people who we serve that are currently in hotels and that will eventually be leaving already are, their case managers and service coordinators have, of course, always been looking for alternatives for them and will continue to do so until one is found.
Yeah. We have a housing crisis. We
Right.
just do. I remember not too long ago, I said, I don't remember where I was or who I was talking to, but I said something about Vermont has a housing crisis, and I received some fire about that. No, we don't. We don't have a housing crisis, and I took some fire on that. Pretty hardcore. We don't have a housing crisis. That's just the government that's telling you that we do, and blah 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 blah. And they went on and on and on. And I'm finally learning, Rick, that sometimes it's just not worth the engagement. You just there's a couple of memes out there for this, but that you basically just let that person live
Yeah.
live in whatever their reality is, and don't engage. It's just not worth the time and energy to engage in that. But we do, in my opinion. I'm assuming your opinion. We have a housing crisis. We had a housing crisis before COVID.
I mean, you can look at that from several perspectives. I mean, the documentation is there. We have the second lowest vacancy rate in the country. You can look at the trend over time, and the market, the housing market, the rental market is very tight.
Sure.
And
Real estate market.
And not only that, I talk to your family and friends, and I mean, I get feedback like that all the time. Our employees, we pay $20 an hour and up at the Good Samaritan Haven. I have employees that live far away from here because they just cannot afford this rental housing market here. And it's not only that they can't afford it, they can't find anything.
Right.
Right. I don't know if you guys, do you get that feedback from your employees?
Oh, yeah. Well, when we can hire somebody.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's that problem.
We've
too.
actually had some new hires that we've had to put up for a long bit of time because they moved here from other places to come work for us, but could not find housing, sometimes for months. So, yeah, we've had them stay in our buildings because there was nowhere to go.
Yeah, we have.
So
we
we're like,
have
but
a number
please come.
of.
We'll find a room in one of our own places, and you can stay here with us until you find something.
We've done the same too. We have
Yeah.
some employees who live like in Enosburg and St. Albans
Yes.
and way up north.
Yes.
And so we do have a bed that they can stay overnight.
Yep.
Sometimes they'll do a double shift, and they'll stay over here to save the driving.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Because then and people are getting beat to hell on their cars too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Keeping a car on the road these days, if you have a limited income, getting an inspection sticker, it's tough.
It is. Yep. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, if folks have been in a hotel for a good bit of time and have followed all the rules, taken really great care of their room and whatnot, are they leaving there with a reference for another rental? Is that a possibility?
Well, gee whiz, that's a great point. I've never heard that come up.
I'm just wondering if they're trying to find one. That seems like a pretty important thing to have.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we do that with the Good Samaritan Haven. We write reference letters for our guests.
That's awesome.
Hadn't thought of doing that or figuring out how to do it for motel guests. I think it's worth
the
following
deposit
up
is
on.
great, but together they're better.
Yeah.
So it would just be a really great thing for a landlord to have, if especially, we know a lot of landlords around here, and if somebody is considering being helpful in that way, a reference and a deposit would be especially good.
Yeah.
And maybe if people are friends from room to room to room and thinking maybe they should go in on a place together, if they
That's
all had a
definitely-
reference and a deposit, that could be helpful too.
That's definitely happening.
Yeah.
We've talked about housing, and we should. It's the big enchilada, so to speak. We need a good housing system, but we don't have time to produce these units right now.
Right.
So we are, not having a better solution. We are gearing up to provide gear for people to be outside.
Right.
What some people are going to do is they're going to live in their cars or they're going to camp.
Right.
And we want to try to support them to do that as safely as possible. And when an opening does occur, in the shelter or in a unit, and then you can move back in and get a real housing unit. So
we have such a short window in Vermont for warm weather. This is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just flat out crazy.
with the idea of living outside.
Well, yeah, especially with you got kids. Come on. What's going to happen next? The end of August, the beginning of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a tragedy.
This is amazing. You said Washington County about 400
in the motels, and then you can add about another 100 that are in shelters or living on the street already. There's been a population outside right along.
Can we break it down even smaller than that? Can Barry City limits?
It's harder to do that because the population does tend to move. Most of the unsheltered population, people living outside, camping, whatever, they're in Montpelier, Barry, and Berlin.
Okay. What about hotels right in Barry?
Well, most of the hotels are in Barry. Perhaps I should name them, but there's probably 5 of them in Barry.
If we had to guess of how many people were or are living in hotels just in Barry City alone right now,
50. I'd say 200.
200.
Yeah.
Barry City.
Yeah, and then Berlin, the largest, the hotel with the most rooms and most guests is the Hilltop Inn, and that's in Berlin. And then, of course, in Montpelier. Oh, see, I'm naming hotels, but the other I might as well keep going. In Montpelier, the O'Connell Lodge has almost 50 rooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Hilltop, how many do we have there?
They have 80 plus rooms, but the occupancy for the emergency support program is somewhat less than that, as a result of negotiations between the town and the management.
Okay.
Yeah.
So between the Hilltop in Berlin and Montpelier, we're talking approximately 50 each.
Oh, well, no, the Hilltop is more like 70, and then the O'Connell Lodge is 50, and then you have some 2-person households. You don't have a lot of children in those 2 hotels, but there may be some. 150 people, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's crazy, isn't it? What we've come to here, and that are so many people in our community this is how they're living and how desperate they are. And and I've met a lot of folks. A lot of people are working, but they just can't figure. I'll tell you, at our shelter in Barry Town, we have 13 beds there. Almost everybody is working in that shelter, and just hard to make all the pieces fit together and get enough money and find a place and to make it work. So I just encourage your listeners not to follow into old stereotypes about who the homeless are.
Right.
Because
that's it.
Well, and if you want to put that number of like 350 people into perspective, that is half of Barry City Middle and Elementary School. Think of half of those students. That's what that 350 people looks like. Half of a school.
Yeah, I one thing I've done is typically the rate of homelessness, it's measured homeless per 10,000 people. Mm-hmm. And if you look at Washington County, we have an astronomically high rate. And it compares to we're not Portland, Oregon in terms of size or anything like that, but our rates are similar to those West Coast cities that we keep hearing about. Yeah. Yep. Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland.
Skid Row.
We have a rate per 10,000 people that is really astronomically high. And I don't know. I can't. Somebody's going to have to study this someday, but it's a pretty alarming situation. Yep. So.
I'm curious to know how the city of Barry government, if they're privy to all of this, and what the plan is. Is there a plan? Are discussions happening about what's coming? And our community has referred to this as the Vermont Hotel Exodus. Is the city council aware of what's coming and how we're going to respond?
I don't know about the city council, but the leadership is aware. At the beginning of the winter, the city hosted
Leadership, public safety.
Leadership, the director of planning, Nick Storelli Castro, I think his name is.
Yeah. City manager.
Yeah, the city manager. Sorry. Yeah, he organized a meeting about homelessness and the upcoming winter. Well attended, a lot of great discussion, a lot of plans for how we can work together, and he also attended the meeting I was referring to earlier in our discussion of public safety officials. He's aware of it, and as is the police chief. And I think that they are, this is a big problem. What does the city do? It's there's not an easy solution. I think they're wanting to learn more and cooperate with the other area towns to have more of a collective response.
Right.
And I know one thing that was decided at that meeting of the public safety officials was we need to get the state of Vermont here to talk to us directly in a no nonsense, how can you help us sort of discussion. So they are working on that. That meeting's going to come up in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, good.
And
there are so many folks, as I'm sure you've heard, who are saying and have been saying this federally funded program has had a shelf life that we've all known about for a long time, and we should have been preparing for this a hell of a long time ago instead of just a couple of weeks before this kind of stuff happened. You've also made a great point this morning that this is not a Washington County, Vermont problem. This is not a state of Vermont problem. This is a huge problem everywhere. Every state has been affected by this and will be affected by this. So, what's the name of the federally funded program that has the expiration date here?
Well, there have been two programs that have funded the motels. It was FEMA initially for let's say the first year, and then it went to the ERAP program, which I mentioned, Emergency Rental Assistance, and now it's the state of Vermont that is paying. This is on our dime now, under the GA Adverse Weather Conditions Program. So yes, everybody knew, and I mean over the last 3 years, I felt like we were prepping. There was going to be a cliff. It was ending, but then it was extended. Things have been done differently, more effectively? Perhaps. I think there was a lot of emphasis on building the stock of affordable housing and expanding it, and that's right and correct. It's a good thing. The problem is that there's a long pipeline to any adding inventory with housing. It's complicated. We've got a great project here in Barrie that Down Street is doing.
Prospect Heights also.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about that for 3 years, and they still haven't broken ground. Okay, so that takes time, and maybe the balance between short-term measures and long-term measures could have been different. And maybe there could have been a winnowing down of this program more gradually, because some people will find solutions.
Right.
It's difficult when you have 100 people in one county that have to find a solution. That's going to have an impact.
Right.
There's just no way around it. So I don't want to criticize our state partners. I think people are doing the best that they can to, you don't have pandemics and in the middle of a homelessness surge every day, so but maybe in retrospect we can look back and say, hey, this is what we could have done differently here.
But to be fair, people have been doing something the entire time. Things have been happening. It just feels like people are only hearing about it when we're at the wire. That's when people are paying attention. That's when people are hearing the most about it. And so for some, it might feel like we're only saying something when we're in the last couple of weeks. But the work has been done the whole time.
I mean, hundreds of people have been housed in good housing.
Yes.
It's just a bigger problem than that.
Yes, and everything takes time. You can't just pop up housing.
You can't just say that and I've heard that, we've all heard this, you can't just say that everyone has just become accustomed to this and just gotten comfortable with it. There are plenty of folks who, from the first day that they have gone into this hotel, with or without their kids, have been trying to figure out, what the hell am I going to do? I'm on borrowed time here. I need to have a plan, and they're actively looking for that plan and saying, this is not how I want to continue to live with my kids or with myself. My goals, my objectives are not to live out the rest of my life in a hotel. I got to figure something out. I'm looking, I'm trying, I'm working, I'm doing whatever. And then, of course, there's probably a sector that has grown comfortable. That's what humans do. We get comfortable with our environment, our circumstances, and we fall into a pattern where we know what to expect. We become familiar with our living situation, whatever it is, and it becomes, for lack of a better term, a habit.
Well, for some, that might be the first time in their lives where they did know what to expect. And for others, it might be a time of amazing stress because they don't know when that door is going to be closed behind them.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a job of social service providers and your mental health system. You meet people where they are. You try to help them move ahead. It's a balance of accountability and acceptance.
Yes.
We have to expect people to help themselves. We can't just say, "Oh, here's all the assistance."
Right.
But that you need to have the right balance there, in my experience.
Yep.
Many people have been traumatized. They come from poverty. So many folks. So yeah.
But you've also seen some middle class folk who have been affected circumstantially. There's things have fallen into place that they never saw coming, and that's called life. And never in a gazillion years would have imagined themselves in a situation like this.
It's incredible. I could tell you stories
sure
I should come in once a week and tell you stories. But
when is Rick DeAngelis writing a book? What's the name of the book? When's it coming out? Who's your publisher?
I don't know. That's the thing. When I retire from this, but at the Welcome Center on the Barre Montpelier Road, almost half of our guests, the word we use, are over 60 years of age. What happened to the honoring our elders and supporting them?
Veterans.
15% are over 70 years of age. So it's these people have worked all their lives. And not to say they didn't make mistakes. Hey, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. But, it just, I don't know. I don't get it. And it just feels that something is amiss here. So.
Nobody's immune. Nobody is immune to that one thing that's going to flip the switch in their life.
Yeah, a lot.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how you live your life or how it's gone for you, no matter how many years you've been on this planet. Nobody is immune.
I have a lot of veterans too
Yep.
that are in our shelters or stayed in our shelters. We have a household, brother and sister. They lived in an apartment. They have some, let's say, some very moderate disability, developmental disabilities. They had an apartment for 25 years, always paid the rent, good tenants, clean, everything. And the property was foreclosed. The new owner came on board and he said, I am emptying out this building. Here's your notice. And that was it. They were done after 25 years there. And, they showed up at the shelter and they had nowhere else to go. They couldn't find another apartment quickly. And they're really wonderful people, very kind and decent, and I just really feel for them.
Comments. There's many this morning. Just glancing quickly, the welfare system and benefits in Vermont are the 5th best in the country. How about a tent city on the newly purchased cow pasture? The state should buy these hotels and turn them into low-income housing. I mean, there's just a lot of comments coming in all over the spectrum. Go ahead.
I thought of that early on. I thought, well, why not make that a permanent thing?
Well,
but I'm
look,
pretty sure the owners of the hotels are not interested in that.
Look what's happening in Burlington. There's pods. People are living in pod communities, communal housing. There's, some say, a little bit of an exodus to the south. People are saying, you know what? I've been freezing my ass off up here for a long time. Time to go. But the grass is not always greener on the other side. Every
Warmer.
climate,
But maybe not greener. Yeah.
But there's always, no matter where you go, there's going to be challenges that may be different. May not be in the form of cold and snow, but still.
There has been an effort to buy we bought a motel, by the way. We bought the Twin City motel, and we've looked at all the other motels as well, and there is still a effort to try to do that.
Nice.
We're not done yet, so.
But tourism will be maybe affected in some capacity, where certain towns are more condensed with tourism and not spread out across the state as much.
Yeah. Some of the motels we have here, that is a significant part of their business. But some of them it is not.
Right.
They have capacity.
I guess my point, what I'm trying to say is, Stowe only has so many hotels. That's what I'm saying. You know? And I don't mean literally Stowe, but more figuratively.
Yeah.
The gold towns.
Some of those towns also participated in the emergency housing. Some of the motels that they also participated in this program. But some of that has shrunk as well.
Right.
And that has been a tension over the last 3 years, is finding motel rooms. But that's not going to be a problem on May 31st, because the demand is going to go way down. So, yeah, just one of the comments was about camping and stuff like that. I mean, hey, that's where we're at, and we did start a fund. We announced the fund. We're trying to raise $20,000 for supplies, and that is camping supplies, and other things that people would need to do that, to survive. One of the difficulties is, where do you camp? And we have a street outreach. We have a street outreach team, and we work closely with the police and parks officials, to redirect people to the best spots, or the non-sensitive areas, let's say.
Yeah.
Right.
And there aren't many of them.
Right.
There's just not that much open public space in Barrie, Montpelier, and Berlin. So that's one thing we're scratching our head about right now. What can we recommend to folks if they are going to camp? And
Right. So it'd be great to hear from those municipalities around where would be a good place, a safe place, a place that is not going to interfere, but will be a safer place for people to be.
Right. Exactly.
So.
yeah, we've asked them in that meeting we had 2 days ago. I said, you guys gotta help us out here. I mean, we can keep an eye on people, give them supplies, stuff like that. But where are we going to tell them to go? And but it's really sensitive, because if you point at one place, then somebody's going to say, "Oh, that's no good. I walk my dog by there all the time," or something like that.
Right.
Of course.
And
Right.
so
What's
Yeah, no.
Tell me about this fund and where it is, how we get involved and donate to it and whatnot, financially or with materials.
Great. Yes, it's go to our website, GoodSamaritanHaven.org. Right on the front page, there's a a note, a button you can hit, and for what we are calling the Homelessness Emergency Support Fund. And it's the basics: tents, sleeping bags, tarps, water, food, all those, medical supplies. And we have a street outreach team that, we're always handing out this stuff, but the volume is going to go up a lot, and we want to be prepared.
This is so
for
surreal to hear this. It's for me anyway.
Yeah.
Do you begin your day ever kind of scratching your head saying, I don't know how we're going to do this?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really worry about the shelter network. Shelters are difficult to run, and there's crisis every day. And I'm concerned about my staff and their well-being, and that they don't get discouraged. So sure thing. But I don't know. You just do the best you can, I guess. So.
Anything else that you can think of, Heather?
Just that I spoke with Mary, and she said that we'll have a distribution point for items in Montpelier, and we are discussing one in Barrie as well for folks to be able to pick up. So
okay,
I obviously will let you know what those are so that we can get them posted.
All right.
Once everything's all.
Is our city manager privy to this?
I'll make sure that he is.
Okay.
Once we have established it fully.
A distribution area
Of this gear, yeah.
Okay. We all know that it doesn't stay warm very long in
It
this
doesn't.
state.
No.
It just doesn't.
We'll also be sharing your link to donate on our Facebook page for
Wonderful.
Washington County.
Thanks.
So,
And again,
JD
that's
will
good.
be sharing
That's
it.
GoodSamaritanHaven.org.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll share it on our page. You'll share it on your page.
Yes, we will.
We'll be blasting it everywhere.
Yes, we will. Anything else, Rick, that you can think of?
No, we're going to keep working at this with our partners, our great partners at Washington County Mental Health Services and Capstone and Downstreet. And this is hard. This is challenging. We've got a great community here, though, and people care, and they're paying attention and they want to do something. So I'm hopeful.
Thank you for coming in. Very, very much. I hope to have you back in here. Maybe this summer. I don't know. I'm going to take your direction on that. When you need a microphone, you got it right here.
Okay, good to hear. I'll be back sooner than that.
Thank you, pal.
Okay.
Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, JD.